Hi, I'm Cody Anderson, one of the pastors here at Parker United Methodist Church. Throughout Lent, we have been journeying with Peter as he has been walking alongside Jesus, learning about his faith, wrestling with the questions that he has had, and asking Jesus to teach him more. So on Sunday, we heard the story of Peter doing exactly that. Jesus is teaching about forgiveness, and Peter wants to know more. How many times, Lord, do I have to forgive? Have you ever wondered that same question? I hear echoes of myself in that question so many times as I often wonder, God, how many times do I keep forgiving this person? God, did you not see what this person did to me? Do you not understand the pain that they caused? How can I forgive them? Isn't forgiveness letting them off the hook? Peter doesn't just sit with that question. He asks Jesus. And Jesus responds by telling Peter that you need to forgive as often as you are forgiven by God, right? We pray that in the Lord's Prayer. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. There is this abundance of God's forgiveness and mercy and grace for us. And as disciples, we're asked to give back in generous and abundant ways of that same thing that we have been given. But how do we really do that? How do we really do that when someone harms us over and over and over again? How do we really do that when the crime that has been committed against us is so much that forgiveness feels like we're just letting that person off the hook? Well, Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount talks a little bit about the history that we had been taught, the people had been taught for years about an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. And Jesus, in Jesus's way, upends all of those thoughts, and he teaches about this. He says, "You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist an evildoer. But if anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your coat, give your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go also the 2nd mile. Give to everyone who begs from you, and do not refuse anyone who wants to borrow from you. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." Forgive, to give more, to go the extra mile, right? That's how Jesus teaches us to live. That kingdom world that is turned upside down from the ways that we live in this world, the ways that we believe things should happen. This is an upside down way of thinking about that. So what does that really look like? If somebody hits me, my obvious reaction is to hit them back, right? I don't want somebody to hurt me, and so a lot of times it's really hard to turn the other cheek. I keep coming back to the story that I remember hearing years ago, and it's from a school shooting that happened in Amish County in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. It was October 2nd, 2006, and a man named Charles Carl Roberts, he was a milkman in the area, had lost his daughter years ago, and he entered the West Nickel Mines School, which was a one-room schoolhouse in the heart of Amish country, and he shot 10 children, killing 5 of them and severely injuring 5 others, and then he took his own life. His family believes that he could not forgive God and get over the death of his daughter, and so he retaliated against people who had nothing to do with that. His mom, Terry, has since written a book, and she writes about that day. She says, "As I turned on the radio on the way there, the newscaster was reporting that there had been a shooting at the local Amish schoolhouse. And by the time I was at my son's home and I saw my husband and the state trooper standing right in front of me as I pulled in, and I looked at my husband and he said, "It was Charlie. I will never face my Amish neighbors again." Can you imagine the pain of those parents, of Charlie's family, the shame that was induced by that? Here are their neighbors, these people who live in a space of love and kindness, and now their loved one has gone and done the worst thing imaginable. He has taken the life of 5 innocent children and changed the lives of 5 innocent others, and has completely upended this community. Of course, they thought that they would never be able to face their Amish neighbors again. But what they found was something completely different than what they expected. That same day of the shooting, what they found was Amish neighbors began to visit their family and to comfort them. They brought baskets of food and other gifts. They stuffed their mailbox with notes expressing their support and their forgiveness. The Roberts family was even invited to the funeral of one of the victims. And as the Roberts family held their own private funeral for their son that week, they were surrounded by 40 other Amish neighbors that surrounded them around the graveside like a crescent, holding them in that love and forgiveness. I don't know how to forgive that way. I don't know how you can show up for somebody in that way who has caused you harm or their family has caused you harm. All I know is that is what it looks like to love and to forgive in abundant ways. In 1 John 4, we hear that God is love, and those who abide in love abide in God, and God abides in them. Because we love because he first loved us. Those who say, "I love God," and hate their brothers or sisters are liars. For those who do not love a brother or sister whom they have seen cannot love God whom they have not seen. The commandment we have from him is this: those who love God must love their brothers and sisters also. Abiding in God's love is the only way that I know how we are able to forgive in such an extravagant way. And that doesn't mean that we're not going to fail. It doesn't mean that there aren't going to be instances where it is hard to forgive, in fact, maybe impossible. There are going to be times in which you have to remove yourself from somebody. The harm is so great there. And I don't think that that's what Jesus is speaking to in this. I do think that Jesus is calling us to have a different perspective on forgiveness. That maybe forgiveness is more about an act of love than it is about letting somebody off the hook. That forgiveness is going a little bit further over and beyond of what is expected of us, and it offers and extends the grace that God has. See, it's not a human ability to be able to forgive in that way, but it is a God-given ability, a God-given grace that can flow through us if we abide in God's love. So there's this parable about a holy man who was practicing his morning meditation under a tree. And under that tree, these roots stretched out over this riverbank. And during that meditation, he noticed that the river began to rise. And there was a scorpion that was caught on the roots that was about to drown in one of those roots that was going down into the river. And so what this holy man did was he crawled out on the root and he reached down to free the scorpion. But every time that he reached his hand out, the scorpion tried to strike him back, trying to sting him. And a man who was passing by stopped and he said to the holy man, "Don't you know that that is a scorpion? It's in the nature of the scorpion to want to sting." And the holy man replied, "That may well be, but it is in my nature to save, and I will not let the scorpion's desire to hurt change my desire to help." See, we are called to live as Jesus did, to love, to help, and to forgive. To not be overcome by evil, but to overcome evil with good, no matter how many times that we are stung. So the question for us is, how far will we allow our faith to penetrate our lives? How far are we willing to go with Jesus? How far are we willing to better understand what Jesus is calling us to do? Will we be a people who demand our right in every situation, demand that everything is made equal and fair and just? Or are we willing to sacrifice our rights, our pride, to spread the goodness and love of Jesus to others who may be in their nature to sting us? That is the question that we all have to wrestle with. And as we wrestle with that, we cry out, "Teach me, O Lord." It's not in my nature, God. It's hard for me to forgive. It's hard for me to let go of those wounds and the ways that people have hurt me. But God, teach me. So I want to end our time with this. It's a poem by Reverend Sarah Speed, and it's called Teach Me. Teach me about the ways of the wind, about the ways of the world, about the ways of the heart. Teach me about the soft crook of my friend's arm and the way two souls can hold each other close. Teach me about forgiveness, about the language of I'm sorry, and the softness of sincerity. Teach me about abundance, about 70 times 7, and all the days of my life. Teach me about joy, about its contagious weaving and its soul healing. Teach me about mercy, about open hands and deep breaths. Teach me about the dawn of time and the stars in the sky. Teach me what matters most. Teach me what is mine to do. Teach this achingly curious heart until I run out of questions or I run out of days. Teach me some melodious sonnet, and I will have a life well lived. My friends, even if forgiveness is hard, even if we don't understand how to forgive, let us at least have an open heart of curiosity, asking God to teach us where things feel impossible, asking God to lead us when times are tough, asking God to help us better understand so that we might be able to follow Jesus all of the days of our lives.